be back out in the shop here for a bit after the holidays and all. Got this little piece of cherry here that I'm going to make a hollow form out of. And I got a new set of Trent Bosch hollowing tools for Christmas. So I got the little carbides. I should make this a lot of fun. Let's see how we spin up here. Perfect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and round the bottom off, put a smaller foot on this one so that I'll leave a little meat down there to carve. We'll have a little shallow bit of a neck up in this area and then a small opening, and then we'll try to get a nice thin hollow form using our visualizer. So should end up being a fun project. Probably won't have a lot of commentary on this one, to be honest. I'm just going to go through and do the project and keep it running. If something interesting comes up or I think there's a point to make about something, I'll jump back in with a little commentary. But I think at this point, this will just be a fun project to get back on the lathe with. Okay, at this stage, got a nice big thick base. So if I want to carve some feet into it later, we have that. I need to get rid of this little nub here because it won't fit in my chucks. And this side up here has got some figure, a big knot, and a little bit of punkiness in it. So I'm going to flip it around so we don't risk this tenon breaking off, and we'll clean it up from that end. But first we'll get rid of this nub here. So with that, I left a little dimple here, so we have a nice, easy way to get center. I'm going to go ahead and mark that with a pencil real quick while it's spinning so that we know if we need to turn it around or recenter it for some reason, that we've got a really good indicator of where our center was from our beginning here. So that should help us out there. And then just for a little extra security, I'm going to go ahead and use the tailstock to mark that all the way. Got a nice bullseye now for when the time comes for us to flip it around. found that if I don't get that exactly right, especially when I'm hollowing, that I can end up with some little weird deformations that I'm not nuts about. So let's go ahead and flip this around. I think I can still do it on this jaw if I eyeballed that right. A nice sturdy heavy base down here. Good tenon. Seated all the way into the bottom of the jaws. Pretty critical for hollowing, because we're not going to really be able to put a steady rest down here. It's pretty small. I might be able to get it in there. We'll see. I think though that this will be small enough we shouldn't get too much torque on it. Now I'm going to peel this off into my final shape on the top, and then we'll drill our starting hole and set up for hollowing. My goal right now is to make sure that this crack here, we turn past it or I fill it now. This up here is all going to go away. So let's first get rid of that crack, see how much material we have left here. Still some significant crack in here that runs pretty far down. Might end up with a much smaller looking globe at this point, but I'm going to cut into that and see what we got. So the whole point of what I'm working on now is just to see if we can get through this big crack in the timber here. It looks like it's pretty darn deep. Pretty darn deep. This would have been a nice shape. Still make something pretty out of this, but it's not going to have the original intent shape that I was looking for. But let's see if we can round this down and still make it worth experiment here. Again, we're just roughing out, trying to see what wood we actually have to work with. We're not doing any final shaping or anything. This crack's almost gone. It can easily be a little CA in there, a little star bond will take care of that, no problem. And this one up here is more problematic. It's pretty deep and still going in, so this is going to have to go. So far now we're just shaping a little up here, see if we're nothing but good wood. Okay, we still have that little bit of punk here. We'll deal with that. But overall, pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little star bond in there and some accelerator, and we'll get back to cleaning that up when it's dry. the trick. You see we've got that filled all the way in now, nice and shiny. And the rest of it I can shape a little bit differently. I don't want to come into here, but I don't want to do that right away because this is where our feet's going to be. It's going to be kind of an onion. We'll also have to flatten out the top to get our starting hole, which will be just 1 inch. That's what I'm planning for this. Don't think I can go any smaller than that. It's a pretty piece of wood, just not a stunningly stable one. But I think where we're at should look pretty good. Top off here. All the way through the crack there. Let's go ahead and drill a starting hole, give us an idea what we can work with here. 1 inch or 25 millimeter roughly, Forstner bit. We do have quite a bit of base down here that we can work with. And our rationale for that is later we want to carve some feet in to make it interesting. So all the way to the bottom here, this is 3 inches. And that's just to where the chuck is. It's going to be roughly 3 inches. So if we only go in 3 inches over here, we'll call it, yeah, we'll go the full 3. That makes it just an easy round number. No magic to it, just to give us a place to start. And then before we set up all of our turning gear for a hollowing, I'll sand the outside and get a polish on it. But when we flip it over, we'll do our carving with this mounted in a jam chuck backwards with tailstock support. So we'll get the basic shape we want, and then the rest of it we take off and we'll actually carve it by hand. We'll use the Dremel for part of it, little power carving. And then after that, the rest is going to be chisels and sanding. So I dropped my speed down to about 300 RPM for drilling a hole. I'm gonna set ourselves up to 1 inch here on the quill, so I have a good starting spot for our indicator. Go ahead and push it into the piece. I'm going to start a light cranking in. I don't really rush this at all. But once we get to 4 inches here, we'll know that's how far we've traveled. Full 2 inches in, so I'm just going to rewind us back here to 2. There we are. And get our next. So we have our starting hole. Ooh, some worm in there. And we'll try to go nice and thin on this one. Around the edges, we'll just leave that little hole up there. I might make a stopper for it with a little thinner or something. We'll see what the final shape ends up being. More than likely, this is just going to be a good practice to get the techniques down for hollowing. There's really, it's not a, I'm going to be honest, it's a pretty piece of cherry, but it's got some older cracks, a little bit of punkiness in it. It's just an offcut. But sometimes when you don't have a specific project in mind, you just want to get out and turn. It's great to use up those little scraps and offcuts. And I don't have any Christmas markets left for the year. None of that's going down, so all it is for me is a chance to get out in the shop and enjoy my passion, which is turning wood. And then from there we can play around. This is the same way I made my large Christmas ornaments too, by the way. did the same thing. I made a ball, hollowed it out, then turned 2 different finials for the ends, for the look. And I did that all just like I do in here with just scraps. So I know that sanding is no one's favorite, so I'm gonna go ahead and pause and sand, and I'll bring you right back when we're ready. Okay, it's been sanded just to 400. And well, it probably won't be the last time it gets sanded, to be honest, either, but I wanted to get a little finish on here, so I'll give you a quick peek as we put the shot make grit on here. Daniel style grit. And I'm getting ready to have to make a whole nother batch of that. So I've said I don't plan on making a video on how to do it. McDaniels does a great job of that. It's a great place to get your insight on it, but I'll probably at least video it just so you can see my specific recipe and how I measure out the different components. But I've sent samples of this to a couple of my buddies, and they've all had their own tweaks to it. So I mean, it's definitely a very personal thing that kind of you'll get what you think's best for you, and that's how it should be. Let's crank up the speed here and make sure we clean off. Not seeing anything coming out there. So there you go. It's ready for us to start to set up the hollowing gear and get in there. It looks pretty good. The knot, a little figure here turned out pretty nice. There's a little bit of compression figure here where that branch was coming out. A teeny bit of spalting. Again, just a little cherry offcut, and that's when you're doing little practice pieces and having fun, this is a great way to do it on the cheap. Okay, whenever we're ready to start hobbling, I'll get you back. Okay, as you can see here, I've got the visualizer set up. Of course, this is my homemade visualizer. So if we look up here at the screen, you'll see that the tip there is already colored red. And so I'll be able to see deep inside my fixture, or my little product here, a little teeny hollow form, as I hollow it from down here. So I'll just let that run from this angle, and hopefully that'll give you a good idea of how I'm getting this done. As we can see, my hole is too small to get full contact in there, it looks like. I start touching the hollow form before the cutter cuts into the wood here. See? Rubbing right there before the wood takes hold. So I'm going to have to swap out to the thin tool and start out with a bent instead of going with the straight tool to start. But I mean, we're on our way, and you kind of get an idea of how that works. You also get an idea of how sometimes time consuming and how these little mistakes and not realizing that the 5/8 inch tool that I have here cannot operate in that small of an opening. So I probably need to get the next size smaller tools, but I just got these for Christmas. And it's going to be a while before I make another jump. So let's see if the smaller version here will take a little type off, if that'll fit in there as well. That feels like it'll make contact in there better. But I might need to start with the non-carbides. A super sharp edge on this from the last one I did. See if I think I can get in from the sides. You know, a little bit more of that material. If I get it just a slight angle. But now I'm going to have to redraw our markings up on the board here. Put my little handle back on. I talked to Mr. Bosch just a little while ago about getting a shorter handle for this particular setup I have in here. I just haven't gotten around to having to make me one yet. But it's very responsive and his tools are amazing. So let's see what we do here. You know, we're doing end grain. Boy, I've already got it nice and deep. We're almost to the flat bottom. So this is an end grained part. So now what we'll do is we'll come in with a curve tool, and the opening is still going to be a little small for the carbides, but once we get in there, we should be able to pull that around inside of that there just fine. I'm going to go ahead and change the camera angle so you can see up on the screen, hopefully, what I'm looking at. That might work best. Let's take a few shots like this so you guys can see the tool in action there. So you can see up there, I've just covered the tip of the tool on the screen with that red ink. And I'm almost down to the bottom here of the actual, see even my finger, you can go through my finger. It's magic. But this is the base here. We know that our feet are going to be carved in the tenon down below. So that's the space we have. So what we'll do now, I'm kind of at the limit of this tool, so I get a slight bent tool now, and we'll just keep hollowing that one out. It takes a couple minutes to swap things over, but it's actually not that big a deal, and it's safer, a lot more precise, and you're not hunched over your lathe staring into the hole the whole time, which for me was the biggest reason for going this route, was to get a little thinner and take it a little easier on my poor back. So I'll swap out these tools and be right back. Leaving the screen up so you guys can watch the whole process of how simple it is to mark your tool tip. Of course, you got to have the tool out of your hollow form when you're doing it. And all you really have to do is just take a finger up there, wipe off the old, and draw on the new. I just take the tip of the dry erase marker on the tip of this and get around the top. I really don't need the rest of this part up here colored in, but it does help me know exactly where I'm at in the tool. It's just good visual reference. I've seen a lot of guys just cover the tip, and I think I didn't get all the way to the tip. There we go. And it's ready to go. It's that simple. Smoothing out real nice. So I'll move to the next set of tools. I'm going to lift up this rest just a little bit so that the carbides can fit in there. I was trying to line them up, as you saw earlier in the video, directly on dead center, and just the depth of where they sit at in there doesn't allow me to do that. And I'm not entirely certain if that's an operator error on my end, or if that is just a function of how these tools work. They might need to be set a little bit higher. I generally like to go, especially with carbide, absolutely dead center in the middle of my cutting plane. But again, I'm not a carbide wizard by any stretch of the imagination, so I could be misjudging that. But I think we can get the small carbide in now. And the process will all be the same. Looks like I'm clearing everything. Yeah, I think we'll be just fine there. Make sure it's got a slight downward angle before I lock it in place. And it's back, just to rinse and repeat now. So I'll go up there and I'll wipe off the old mark with my finger and put a new mark on, showing me where that cutter head is. And that should be all we need to do to, I think this will be the last tool we access to get the whole thing done on the inside. Then of course we've got to flip it over, jam chuck it, and I will go from there. So with my little circle here for my cutter head, and just trace my tool arm around here. And I'll go all the way to the bend. So if I'm all the way in the tool, we'll know. And that's all there is to it, really. So let's see if we don't have to make any additional adjustments here to use this tool. Yep, I'm gonna have to lift it up probably about 60 thousandths. So I'd lift the whole mechanism up. It's a little more than 60 thou. Let's see if we can get a nice clearance in there and only be running the cutter head. So right to the middle, we are nice and thin. Get the camera over that so you can see it better. So we're really thin right here. And then right in the middle, we start to thicken out again. So I think I'm gonna have to switch over to the unbent tool. So it's just a process like that. You go back and forth, find out what it is your tool needs to get in there. For me, to get all the way into the bottom there, I start rubbing on things. But I do feel like right there, you might be able to still get that nub right there. So I'm going to try that. So that's as far in there as I can get with that tool, and pretty good. Get a lot of extra material though. You guys kind of get the idea. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the straight tool now that we're up at a good height, and we'll finish rounding off this bottom. We are nice and thin. And work down to that other spot down there, and we'll be good to go. Rough lines, but now we just have to get all the way to the bottom here And just clean the bottom up a little bit. There we go. Okay, that's pretty much the whole hollowing process. Now all I have to do is sand, and the way I do that is with a dowel. I'll show you here. So I'm going to take a dowel with a slit in it from the bandsaw, stick a piece of sandpaper through there, and then I stick it at the other end of my drill, and I can get in there and spin that in both directions while the piece is moving. But first I got to take apart the system here, and then we'll get back to turning. So using that dowel method like we talked about, all I'm going to do is get it through the hole and then let her go. Now with a little speed. Blow it out, feel how it feels just to our fingers here. Get a thin one. Everyone wants to stick the finger in it anyway, right? Got to clean up the neck here a little bit. There's still a little bit of roughness. It's not rough, it's actually some delicate tool marks right around the bottom down there. I don't know if I have the right angle with this small of an opening to get in there. So we'll hit it with a little more 80 grit. Okay, I cleaned up the neck real nice. And yeah, we got rid of most of the feelable things down there. You peek inside of it, looks clean. Just the very bottom here has got a little bit of a ring from the last time we used the drill bit. So we're going to need to get in there small and push out that. So this is 25 millimeters, so it's smaller than any sandpaper I have. So we're going to have to use this before. I think this might even be too big though to get in our hole here. Yeah, just barely. Okay, so. So I took care of it, and it did. There we go. So, got this nice little hollow form now, but it's nothing much to it, right? Just not much of a shape or anything. So now we're going to turn it around, and we're going to mount it in a jam chuck and pull this down thin. Remember, our bottom stops here. So we're going to pull this into some tall legs that we'll carve out afterwards. And then I think we're going to probably end up wanting to make some sort of little topper for this thing, but I haven't decided yet. It might be fun just like it is. But let me set up a jam chuck and get this all put together. I got to put away the big hollowing system because it will be in the way because we're going to need the tailstock again. So I'll see you guys back when I'm all set up. Okay, so we're back up here. I've got the jam block set inside of the chuck, and I'm going to show you how important that little dimple we left on the bottom is. So if everything stayed true, this little dimple should allow us to perfectly line up our hollow form on the jam chuck and spin it up nice and true. We don't want a lot of pressure because it's really thin up here. Start slow here. We're looking really true here, but I got a little bit of a wobble here. So we'll get loosened up a little bit. Just try to let it find its spot. And we should be good there. So, what I'm going to do is take this down a little bit, not too far, but we're going to get this round to right about where we want our feet. And then we'll hog out a section of the bottom there where the feet are. Before we do that though, we need to pull this down in and get all this sanded up real nice before we start it on it. Really delicate cuts. You can hear my heater's on and my door just blew open, so I'm gonna go close that door. So right now we're at this spot here where we still have tool mark and a little out of round, so we're gonna have to round this down, and as we come around this edge, we'll keep tightening it up to the size where we want our feet to be. Feet are gonna be considerably smaller, but I need some meat here to work with. Okay, I'm ready to now sand this really good. Teeny bit of tear out along here, same spot we were struggling with before on the other one. And then I'm gonna come in from this end, and we're gonna hollow this a little bit so we have a spot to cut our feet. And then we'll cut those feet with a Dremel tool and a little back saw, and then we'll start to get to work with the chisel. But the rest of this, I'm gonna sand to blend these lines, so we get rid of some of that tear out. Just kind of start to see how it's taking shape though, right? Yeah, no cracks, we're doing okay. Pulling out nicely. And go with the grain across the sanding we already had. Yep, little 180. Feels really nice, but I can see one line in there that's developing. You've all seen the little Joann's, that's 240, the Joann's Magic sawdust, or sanding disc holder here I made from a little bead sorter. It's been a perfect little companion to keep the 2-inch discs in play here. Probably did the trick. I love Abernet, but their finer and finer grits don't seem to hold up very long. With the Duragold, I could just hit it with the air compressor real quick, and I got a nice fresh one again. You see it's all filthy, hold it tight, good as new. So it's kind of why I use the higher grit. I use the Duragold. So next we're going to just do a little bit of the shop grit on here just to start. I'm sure I'll be taking this over to the buffing wheel for the final buffing. And we're going to be using a 2-inch disc to do the final sanding on the feet while it's spinning in the lathe. But we're going to have to carve them first. So to do that, we need to kind of get an idea where our polish is, make sure there's no cracks or scratches or anything we've missed before we head into the next phase here. And then we're going to crank the speed up. Keep in mind, that's just our grit. There's no extra, I haven't put any beeswax or any final finish on here. This one will be a beeswax finish. Okay, now we just have an ugly looking light bulb at this stage of the game. But our goal now is going to be to come in here and cut a little of this material away to make it easier for us to set our feet. I think I can get in there with a parting tool, just to establish someplace where once we get the Dremel out, we're not going to be in trouble there. Although, we started the basic outline of where our feet will go. The smaller parting tool so we can clear out a little more of that material just to save us the time of having to hog it out with the Dremel is all I'm trying to do here. I've only got about a 1/16 of an inch here, and these feet are going to be about that long. So it'd be great if we could get in there with some other tool to move a lot of that material. Could have even drilled our hole to start with a Forstner bit, but we never know exactly how deep the bottom is going to go. Because remember, we're down into here for the actual bottom of this, which follows that whole curve down. So we just have to be careful not to take too much material. So it will take us some extra time cutting those out, but I think it'll be worth it in the end. So I'm gonna get over to the other bench, reset up, and I'll probably put that on a time lapse because it's a long, tedious process. But all we're gonna do is divide this into thirds, mark out the width we want of our feet, and then we're gonna cut down with a back saw to get to the depth of the feet we want, and then we're gonna hog out the rest of that material with a chisel and a Dremel. So that's where we're gonna be heading. For now though, I can't see what you can see, but that's what we got. Kind of pretty. Well, there it is, our final little hollow form. I didn't take a picture or a video of turning the little finial. You can see that in some other videos. Appreciate you joining me. Hope you had a good time. Get out there and turn something.